Hey, Kaleigh. We need to work on our film review.
But I'm spending 3 hours after school to finish my art ISU.
But we need to work on our film review, because it's due, like, sometime soon.
But my art ISU is due tomorrow.
But my art ISU is due tomorrow. Oh, well, too bad. Too bad. You hear what this is? This is the paper of your art ISU. Do you know why? Because our film review matters more. See you in half an hour.
It's 1841, and a reborn man named Solomon Northup is living in New York City. When suddenly he gets the opportunity to spread his fire and his talent in Washington, D.C. When he is there, he is then abducted into slavery, where he is sold and then moves down south under the name Platt, where he then meets other slaves who sympathize with him and he sympathizes with, named Eliza and Patsy, where he faces the horrors of slavery for 12 years. 12 years. 12 years. Yeah, 12 years. The plantation owners force him to do many things like, work, and then they beat him a lot, and he has to face the horrors of what slavery was. Yeah. And then a Canadian landowner realizes that Platt, or Solomon Northup, is actually a legally free man, so that they free him from slavery. And that's how the movie ends.
Okay. Have you home the technical assignment yet? Technical part of the review?
I'm working on my essay. I'm just about to finish.
An essay.
Yeah, the one I've been working on for like 2 weeks.
An essay. You know what? You can do that later. We'll film the review now. Come on, let's go. Let's go. Hurry up. Hurry up.
So now on to technical elements. I'm going to start with music.
Hey, music, my territory. So let's talk about the music. So the music in our original score in 12 Years a Slave is composed by Hans Zimmer. And we know that Hans Zimmer, no matter what, if you hire him to do a score, he'll perform exceedingly well. And he has performed exceedingly well, and in fact, outdone himself. Let's talk about the symbolism in the 12 Years a Slave soundtrack. More specifically, with the melody. Now, with the melody with 12 Years a Slave, it really depends on the different song you're listening to, because the melody is very much the same throughout all the songs. However, it really depends with the melody and how well you can hear it. Actually really depends on if the song is supposed to be played while he is a slave or if he is a free. Let's talk about the part that probably had the most symbolism in the music, as I like to call it, the lonely violin. Now, throughout all the music, the scores and everything, all the melodies and music, it's all done on strings and percussion. You don't hear any pianos, you don't hear any guitars. Why would you hear a guitar? But it's all done on strings, basically, and that sort of adds to the element of authenticity with, Solomon Northup, our main character, our main protagonist, him being, a violinist. And throughout all the different scores, no matter what score it is, you'll always hear a very lonely violin somewhere in there.
So the camera work for 12 Years a Slave was very artistic. The camera angles were really wisely done. They would show the sides of faces where slaves were injured, such as Patsy when she was scratched by Mrs. Epps. They would also show close-ups of the slaves to contrast the emotions between plantation owners when they forced slaves to do certain activities that they did not want to do, such as Mr. Epps forcing the slaves to get up and start playing music and dancing. You could really see the contrast of emotions on their faces, just slowly based on where the camera was pointing. The lighting itself was actually accurately artistic as well, because they would show certain scenes during the daytime where things would take place in the day, and then also they showed scenes of things that would take place at night, such as, when Mr. Epps wanted all the slaves to start dancing and playing, or when he took Patsy out to, violate her. But it's not only used for symbolism of dark times, it's used realistically so that you kind of get a sentiment that these slaves are just, struggling day in and day out, but it's still realistic. Another thing that I found very interesting about the camera work is that usually shots don't last for longer than 5 seconds in modern day TV or film, whereas in this film some shots last a minute or more, and that's kind of differentiating it from all the other movies from what came before it, and it also gives it a really, really impactful moment when, say, for example, when Solomon was staring off after Patsy was whipped. He was just staring for a full minute, and you truly get to analyze his emotion and feel the impact that he is feeling. Now, on to acting. Was the acting believable? Yes. Were the actors cast well? Yes, that's a big yes. There were a few actors that stood out to me, such as Lupita Nyong'o, who played Patsy, as well as Sarah Paulson, who played Mrs. Epps. The two leading women of the movie, they played crucial roles, but the amount of work and passion that they put into each character is extraordinary. I couldn't imagine Patsy being played by any other woman than Lupita Nyong'o, because she is a strong feminist actress, and she is using her acting method abilities to show her past, what she came from, so passionately. And Sarah Paulson, who plays a numbed white woman who is the wife of a plantation owner, she's supposed to feel numb, and yet even with such a performance where you're supposed to feel numb, Sarah Paulson shows that struggle with dull expressions. So, the voice acting as well. The voice acting really stood out to me, because Solomon, he was born free, so obviously he had rights that slaves didn't, including probably in education. So he had very refined language, whereas Patsy would say, she would speak in slang, and as well as the other slaves, and the plantation owners, since they were Southern instead of Northern American, they would speak in their Southern accents. So I really thought that the voice acting was really underrated for the film, but it was perfect.
So let's talk about historical accuracy in 12 Years a Slave. Now, the film actually is very historically accurate, because it's directly based on the book 12 Years a Slave, which is a memoir from Solomon Northup. So it is based on a true story with real people that he has, written about. So based on the summary, there isn't much, they didn't really change much from the actual memoir. What they did change is, in the actual memoir, he has written that he was with Mr. Epps for about 10 years and only with Ford for about around 1 year. So in the movie, they don't really put that to scale. It's almost as if you see him with Ford for half the time and Epps the other half of the time, when really that's not very historically accurate. But it makes sense why they would take a liberty with that, considering that, it is a movie and has to be entertaining. But, it's generally very historically accurate. The way that, the slaves were treated, the way that everything went, the way people talked to each other, it was, historically accurate. The violin playing and the fact that there were free men and freed slaves already in the North, that was common to the time. Now, an interesting part is where they take artistic liberties, such as the costumes.
No, I am the costume expert. Okay, let's get down to business. These costumes were amazing. They were historically accurate, since it takes place in around the 1850s, or 1840s, I suppose. It's the Victorian kind of style, so they would have, bodices that would emphasize the thin waist and a bigger bust. They would also have petticoats where, you know, women wore under their dresses to, like this girl, to make her hips look bigger and to give her a full skirt. Sarah Paulson, who plays Mrs. Epps, as I stated before, she wore a very beautiful Victorian dress that was very accurate of the time period. It's very rich and it has floral patterns because, you know, they're the wealthy ones, they're the ones that get the rights to afford them, whereas the slaves, they get nothing but, you know, simple clothing. There's no patterns, it's just run-down fabrics and very dull colors with earthly tones, whereas the more rich colors, such as, you know, blue, yellow, purple, the colors that Mrs. Epps wore, they would be much more expensive, so only the privileged would be able to wear them.
So, Kaleigh, what would you rate the movie? 12 Years of Slavery.
12 Years a Slave.
12 Years of Slavery, what would you rate it?
I would probably rate it a 9.5 out of 10. I mean, the acting was superb. The technical elements made it a standalone film. Casting was great. Lupita Nyong'o, loved that lady. It was historically accurate. I mean, the only thing that I didn't like is that it took time away from my art ISU and my essay.
Yeah, I would rate it a Son of the North out of 10 because it would make me sad, and I don't like being sad.
He means that it's a 9.5 out of 10 for all the same reasons.
Shut up. I don't like being sad, it made me sad. That's why it's a bad movie.
It's a good